by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On tonight's headlines. 2 police officers were shot as angry protests rippled across the U.S. after authorities announced no one would be charged with the killing of Breonna Taylor. U.S. President Donald Trump refused to guarantee that he will transfer power if he loses the November election, earning scorn from his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden. Hong Kong activist Joshua Wong says he will continue to resist after he was arrested for the 3rd time since the city's pro-democracy unrest erupted last year. Israel toughened its coronavirus measures on Thursday as a second nationwide lockdown, now nearing its 2nd week, failed to bring down the world's highest infection rate. Hong Kong activist Joshua Wong said he will continue to resist after he was arrested for the 3rd time since the city's pro-democracy unrest erupted last year. The detention of the city's most high-profile dissident is the latest in a string of arrests of government critics and comes after China imposed a sweeping new national security law on Hong Kong in June. Take a look.
With the chilling effect generated by the Beijing authorities, it's the 3rd cases that I need to face already since last June I left prison. But no matter what happened, I will still continue to resist and hope to let the world to know that how Hong Kongers choose not to surrender. Even they can prosecute us, they can arrest us, they can lock us up in prison, but they can't censor our commitment, continue to fight for freedom.
The march that day came after much of the city had been grounded to a halt, with the subway suspended and many shops and malls shuttered following a night of violence. Hundreds of protesters, almost all masked, staged the unsanctioned demonstration through the popular shopping district of Causeway Bay, a day after the city's leader, Carrie Lam, outlawed masks by invoking colonial-era emergency powers not used for half a century. Now, after being arrested again, Hong Kong's most high-profile activist Joshua Wong also urged the world to pay attention to the dozen of Hong Kong activists detained in Shenzhen after their failed attempt to flee to Taiwan. Let's listen in.
So I urge the international community, instead of only focusing on prominent activists just like me, I wish more people can pay attention to how 12 detainees are still being detained in Shenzhen and with the secret detention, which is totally violate on human rights. It's time to urge the government stop the political prosecution. Chilling effect is not the way out, and it will not cause us to surrender.
Upon his release, Wong tweeted, "Today's arrest is a notorious abuse to the criminal justice system by placing charges ruled unconstitutional earlier. However, I choose not to surrender," he said. To the U.S. now, criminal charges were filed in the shooting death of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, but not for the killing itself. Taylor, an emergency room technician, died when 3 plainclothes policemen turned up at her door in the middle of the night to execute a search warrant. Now, Taylor's boyfriend, who was in bed with her, grabbed a gun and exchanged fire with the officers. He later said he thought they were criminals. The officers, who had not activated their body cams as required, shot Taylor multiple times. A police sergeant was wounded. Now, Daniel Cameron, Attorney General for Kentucky, said that one of the 3 officers involved in the shooting would face criminal charges, not for her death, but for recklessly shooting into a neighborhood apartment. Let's listen in.
Grand jury voted to return an indictment against Detective Hankinson for 3 counts of wanton endangerment for wantonly placing the 3 individuals in apartment 3 in danger of serious physical injury or death. There is no conclusive evidence that any bullets fired from Detective Hankinson's weapon struck Ms. Taylor. The KSP ballistics analysis did not identify which of the 3 officers fired the fatal shot. After receiving that information, I asked the FBI crime lab to conduct its own analysis to see if they reached the same results. The FBI ballistics analysis concluded the fatal shot was fired by Detective Cosgrove. Criminal homicide encompasses the taking of a life by another. While there are 6 possible homicide charges under Kentucky law, these charges are not applicable to the facts before us because our investigation showed, and the grand jury agreed, that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in the return of deadly fire after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. I know that not everyone will be satisfied with the charges we've reported today. My team set out to investigate the circumstances surrounding Ms. Taylor's death. We did it with a singular goal in mind, pursuing the truth. Kentuckians deserve no less. If we simply act on emotion or outrage, there is no justice. Mob justice is not justice. Justice sought by violence is not justice. It just becomes revenge. And in our system, criminal justice isn't the quest for revenge. It's the quest for truth, evidence, and facts, and the use of that truth as we fairly apply our laws. Our reaction to the truth today says what kind of society we want to be. Do we really want the truth, or do we want a truth that fits our narrative? Do we want the facts, or are we content to blindly accept our own version of events? I understand that Miss Breonna Taylor's death has become a part of a national story and conversation. But we must also remember the facts and the collection of evidence in this case are different than cases elsewhere in the country.
Now, that news sparked protests across the country, including in New York, Boston, Washington, and Los Angeles. Thousands of demonstrators had flooded the streets of Louisville in the afternoon. Now, the news sparked protests across the country, including in New York, Boston, Washington, and Los Angeles. But the biggest demonstration was in Taylor's hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, where 2 police officers were hospitalized after being shot late Wednesday.
I am very concerned about the safety of our officers. Obviously, we've had 2 officers shot tonight, and that is very serious. It's a very dangerous condition. I think that the safety of our officers and the community we serve is of utmost importance.
Now, President Trump, who is campaigning for re-election on a law and order platform, tweeted that he was praying for the 2 police officers that were shot tonight in Louisville, Kentucky. The federal government stands behind you and is ready to help. Thousands of demonstrators had flooded the streets of Louisville in the afternoon. Say her name, Breonna Taylor. They chanted, "No lives matter till Black lives matter." Police in riot gear made several arrests and used flashbang grenades to clear hundreds of protesters from a park where a memorial to Taylor was placed. A state of emergency and an overnight curfew were declared for the city of 600,000, with much of downtown closed to traffic and several shops boarded up in anticipation of more violence. Now, a protest confrontation in Denver escalated when a driver pushes through a car, knocking at least 1 demonstrator to the ground. The countrywide protests were sparked by the announcement that charges would be pressed against only one of the officers involved with Breonna Taylor's death. Now, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden commented on the protests ahead of the demonstrations sparked by the decision to only press charges against one officer involved in Breonna Taylor's death. Again, let's listen in.
It's just, I feel my heart goes out to her mother, and I understand there's a protest they're starting, or they're going to start, or I just want to, pardon me?
They're expected tonight.
Well, they should be peaceful. Do not sully her memory or her mother's by engaging in any violence. It's totally inappropriate for that to happen. And she wouldn't want it, nor would her mother. So I hope they do that calmly.
U.S. President Donald Trump refused to guarantee that he will transfer power if he loses the November election, earning scorn from his Democratic challenger Joe Biden and even from within his own Democratic Party, his own Republican Party rather. Let's listen in.
Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The ballots are out of control.
Now, President Trump frequently claims that mail-in ballots are vulnerable to mass fraud and are being encouraged by Democrats to rig the election. However, there's no evidence that ballots sent through the Postal Service have ever led to any significant fraud in U.S. elections.
See what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly.
In other news now, North Korean soldiers shot dead a suspected South Korean defector after interrogating him at sea, then poured oil over his body and then burned it over coronavirus fears, according to Seoul military officials on Thursday. The man had disappeared off a patrol vessel near the western border island of Yongpyang. Let's listen in.
우리 군은 북한의 이러한 만행을 강력히 규탄하고 이에 대한 북한의 해명과 책임자 처벌을 강력히 촉구한다. 아울러 우리 국민을 대상으로 저지른 만행에 따른 모든 책임은 북한에 있음을 엄중히 경고한다.
Now, it's the first killing of a southern citizen by North Korean forces for a decade and comes with Pyongyang at high alert over the pandemic and inter-Korean relations at a standstill. The fisheries official disappeared from a patrol vessel near the western border island of Yongpyang. According to the South Korean military, more than 24 hours later, North Korean forces located him in their waters and then questioned him from a patrol boat and with his interrogator wearing protective equipment. He was killed around 6 hours after being found, according to the South Korean official. He said he was shot dead in the water. North Korean soldiers poured oil over his body and burnt it in the water. We assess it was carried out under the North's anti-coronavirus measure, he added. According to the Defense Ministry, the people who burnt the body wore gas masks and protective clothing. There was no immediate comment from Pyongyang on the incident, and it wasn't possible to independently verify the South Korean military's account. South Korean officials said this. Tokyo Olympics could take place without a vaccine. That is, according to authorities. Dennis Liu joins us live from Japan. Dennis.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening, Dennis.
Olympic boss Thomas Bach said Thursday that the Tokyo Games could take place next year even without a coronavirus vaccine, pointing to the success of the Tour de France, striking an optimistic note at a meeting with Tokyo 2020 organizers. He vowed to make the postponed event a triumph despite the uncertainties of the pandemic. He said via video link, quote, "We can see that sport is coming back slowly but surely, and that a number of big sports events have been successfully organized recently, including matches in different Japanese leagues. also very complex events like Tour de France and others, which showed to us and showed to the world that we can organize safe sports events even without a vaccine. But a vaccine and progress in rapid testing would of course greatly facilitate holding the event, said back head of the International Olympic Committee, IOC. Drugs companies are racing to produce an effective jab to counter a virus that has now killed more than 970,000 people around the world and infected almost 32 million. Several leading vaccine candidates are currently in late-stage trials. Bach said it was impossible to make a contingency plan for every scenario and said organizers would not be pressured into making premature announcements on how the games would take place. The 2020 games were postponed earlier this year as the deadly new illness spread around the globe. They are now set to open on July 23rd, 2021, and organizers are insisting they will go ahead in some form and be safe for all involved. Japan is considering easing strict coronavirus border restrictions from October to allow more foreign nationals to enter, according to local media. With the Olympics due to open in July, discussions are also ongoing about how to handle the arrival and movements of athletes and spectators. Alma?
Very much. Dennis, always for your updates there in Japan.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from Tokyo, Japan. This is Dennis Lu. We live in interesting times.
From Japan, we now go to Thailand, where protesters are gathering outside the parliament demanding a new constitution. Gretchen Kusadsad joins us live from Bangkok. Hello, Gretchen.
Hi, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening, Gretchen.
Here in Bangkok, Thailand, Thai protesters gather outside parliament, demand new constitution. Pro-democracy protesters in Thailand gather outside the country's parliament in Bangkok to demand a new constitution. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha had already warned that the country will lose an opportunity to move forward if the anti-government protests persist. He also thanked parents who chose not to let their children to join the rally, and warning that a prolonged conflict could eventually lead to Thailand's destruction. The most symbolic action was this installation of a people's flag, a brass plater the size of a manhole cover in historic Sanam Luang Park near Bangkok's Grand Palace, meant to replicate an installed decades ago that mysteriously vanished 2 years ago. By Monday, the new plaque had also vanished, with police later telling reporters they had removed it to use as evidence. But demonstrators remained unbowed. The largely leaderless youth organized movement, partly inspired by government of Hong Kong's pro-democracy protest, is calling for Prayut's government to be dissolved, a rewrite of 2017 military scripted constitution, as well as the scrapping of Thailand's draconian royal defamation law known as 112. Each charge carries a sentence of up to 15 years in jail, and authorities have so far refrained from using the law against pro-democracy activists, instead accusing them of sedition and breaking coronavirus regulations. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Gretchen, for your updates there in Bangkok, Thailand.
Reporting from Bangkok, Thailand, this is Gretchen Kusadsad. We live in interesting times.
China is running hundreds of detention centers in northwest Xinjiang across a network that is much bigger than previously thought, according to research presented Thursday by an Australian think tank. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute, or ASPI, said it had identified more than 380 suspected detention facilities in the region, where China is believed to have held more than 1 million Uyghurs and other mostly Muslim Turkic-speaking residents. The number of facilities is around 40% greater than previous estimates, according to the research, and has been growing despite China's claims that many Uyghurs have been released. Using satellite imagery, eyewitness accounts, media reports, and official construction tender documents, the Institute said at least 61 detention sites have seen new construction and expansion work between July 2019 and July 2020. 14 more facilities were under construction in 2020 and around 70 have had fencing or perimeter walls removed, indicating their use has changed or they have been closed. Now, Beijing again denied the existence of detention sites. The government says they are vocational training centers used to counter extremism. Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin called ASPI the vanguard of anti-China forces, whose academic credibility is seriously questionable. Take a look.
新疆从来不存在所谓的拘留营。其次呢，我们已经多次就澳大利亚战略政策研究所炮制的各种颠倒黑白的涉华报告做出过回应，实际上是反华势力的急先锋，学术信誉受到严重的质疑。这个机构的所作所为也受到了广泛的批评，早已成为国际社会的一个笑柄。我们希望并相信各方能够明辨是非，共同抵制这种反华机构炮制的荒谬言论。
Eagle News will be right back.
Skyway Stages 1 and 2, the elevated toll road system project, run from a section of the South Luzon Expressway from Alabang to Magallanes, Makati. The Skyway Stage 3 is an elevated expressway connecting the South Luzon Expressway through the existing Skyway Stages 1 and 2 to the North Luzon Expressway via Balintawak. Skyway Stage 4 is an 80-kilometer mixed elevated and at-grade toll road that will connect the existing Skyway system starting from the FTI section all the way to Bulacan.
Hello there, I'm Alfred, and I'm a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, batch of 2008 in New Era University. I'm currently working as an operations analyst in Autodesk.
Hi, I'm Earl Escanio, and I graduated with Bachelor of Science major in Computer Science in 2010. I am a consultant at Trinity Consulting, LLC.
Hi, I'm Ivy Macapagal, Bachelor's of Computer Science graduate, year 2010. I'm currently working as a cybersecurity analyst in one of the largest telco here in New Zealand, Coast Park, NZ.
I'm Jofran David Riego, a BS Computer Science graduate here in 15. As a legal analyst, I am tasked to read U.S. cases, specifically civil torts cases.
I am Melanie Rico Hermosity, a Bachelor of Science and Computer Science graduate, year 2006.
I'm currently a software quality assurance engineer at FBI Systems here in Maryland, United States.
Hi, I'm Renzo Cruz. I'm a graduate of BS Computer Science, year 2012. I'm currently working abroad, and I'm working as a senior cybersecurity consultant who specializes in digital forensics and incident response. And I am part of a national security in one of the countries here in the Middle East.
I am inviting everyone to study at New Era University to legit, to grit.
Be brilliant in the new era.
Study now at New Era University.
Excellence,
discipline,
service to humanity.
Welcome back. Belarus leader Alexander Lukashenko held his presidential inauguration in secret after claiming victory in disputed polls that his opposition rivals have described as massively rigged. A number of Western countries have refused to acknowledge Lukashenko as president following his inauguration. Let's listen in.
Мы не просто выбирали президента страны, мы защищали наши ценности, нашу мирную жизнь, наш суверенитет и нашу независимость.
Эта так называемая инаугурация, конечно же, фарс. На самом деле, сегодня Лукашенко просто ушел на пенсию.
Officials in Paris and Marseille reacted angrily after the national government announced tighter restrictions to curb a flare-up of coronavirus cases, in particular for restaurants and bars already hammered by a 2-month lockdown last spring. Health Minister Olivier Véran announced that bars, restaurants, and gyms in Marseille will shutter from Saturday, while eating and drinking establishments in Paris and 10 other cities will close at 10 p.m. starting Monday. Marseille was put on maximum alert, while Paris was at elevated alert, the second tier on a new sliding scale system of infection control measures. The Mediterranean port city objected that it wasn't consulted ahead of time and insisted that steps taken locally have started bearing fruit in breaking the virus outbreak. Under the new measures, public establishments such as theaters, museums, or cinemas in Marseille will also have to close unless they have strict virus barrier measures in place. The city asked for a 10-day reprieve to show its own measures were working. For her part, Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo said she had lodged a formal protest. Véran's announcement came as the Public Health Agency reported 13,072 new cases in 24 hours countrywide, a new daily record since a March to May lockdown was lifted. Over the same period, there were 783 hospital admissions for coronavirus and 130 new patients in ICU or intensive care. Apart from restricted bar and restaurant hours starting Monday, Paris will also see gyms and other indoor sports facilities closed. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, says we'll know by the end of the year whether vaccines that have reached trial are safe and effective, as he testifies before the Senate Health Committee. During the hearing, the director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, Robert Redfield, said that according to preliminary results from the first round of a sequential study, a majority of our nation, more than 90% of the population, remains susceptible. Let's listen in.
Currently, there are 3 platform candidate vaccines that have entered into phase 3 trial. Very soon there will be a 4th. And so as these trials go on, we predict that sometime by the end of this year, let's say November or December, we will know whether or not these are safe and effective. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, right now, doses of this vaccine are being produced so that they'll be ready to be distributed. See, yes, I've said that in the past, that if a vaccine that's shown to be and proven to be and authorized by the FDA to be safe and effective, I certainly would take that vaccine, and I would recommend to my family that they take that vaccine.
The smart thing for college administrators to do
is to send those college students home when the outbreaks occur on campus?
Absolutely not, Mr. Chairman. They should be able to accommodate the students in a facility, maybe a separate dorm or a separate floor, so they don't spread among the student body, but do not send them home to their community because of the likelihood of then reseeding infection in a community.
CDC is in the process of a very large sequential study across the entire United States measuring serology. As I mentioned, the preliminary results on the first round show that a majority of our nation, more than 90% of the population, remains susceptible.
Meanwhile, Israel toughened its coronavirus measures as a second nationwide lockdown, now nearing its second week, failed to bring down the world's highest infection rate. The new rules will close the vast majority of workplaces, shutter markets, and further limit prayers and demonstrations. Over the past 2 days, we've heard from experts that if we don't take immediate and harsh measures, will reach an abyss. That is according to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu late Wednesday at the start of a cabinet meeting to thrash out the new measures. The government's latest move comes as the country is poised to enter the second week. A 3-week lockdown imposed last Friday, which included the closure of schools and restrictions on work and leisure. Under the new measures set to be approved in Parliament later Thursday, synagogues will only be allowed to open on Yom Kippur, a Jewish holiday which begins Sunday afternoon. A decision on whether to close Ben Gurion International Airport outside Tel Aviv will be made later on Thursday also, according to the government. Israel has the world's highest coronavirus infection rate as a proportion of its population, according to an AFP tally of the past fortnight. Some hospitals have reached capacity and are having to turn away people, with some patients forced to wait for hours in ambulances, according to the Emergency Medical Services Magen David Adam. As Israeli doctors confront a surge in coronavirus cases, with some patients waiting for hours in ambulances, one hospital is tackling the crisis by transforming its car park into a ward. Wearing a white face mask and gown, Michael Halberthal expressed his frustration that his hospital in the northern city of Haifa has been pushed to take such a dramatic step. Take a look.
We are reorganizing and all this underground facility and equipping with all the different equipment that needs for the operation. We will be ready for operation probably somewhere tomorrow, and then we will transfer patients over here. The total capacity of this facility for COVID-19, according to the government or Ministry of Health request, is 770 patients, 170 of them critical. This is what we requested to arrange.
All the Israeli hospitals are very crowded now, and some of these hospitals reach the 100 capacity and over of their ability to treat patients with COVID-19.
Now, the car park can withstand war, having been earmarked as a possible shelter after Israel's 2006 conflict with the Lebanese group Hezbollah. The country has recorded more than 200,000 cases since the pandemic hit, with 1,317 deaths. Israel's second wave of cases has hit particularly hard in the country's north, home to much of the Arab minority that makes up around 20% of the population.
1615.
Eagle News will be right back.
Do you want to earn a degree while you work? New Era University now offers expanded tertiary education equivalency and accreditation program, or ETIAP. ETIAP is an educational scheme that recognizes knowledge, skills, and prior learning obtained by individuals from non-formal and informal education experiences. It is implemented through deputized higher educational institutions like the New Era University that awards the appropriate degrees. Programs offered are the following. Master's Program, Masters of Arts in Education, major in Educational Management, Master's Program in Business Administration, Bachelor of Arts in Science, major in Political Science, Bachelor of Arts in Science, major in Mass Communication, Bachelor of Science in Education, major in Filipino, major in English, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with majors in Human Resources Development, Marketing Management, and Financial Management. Beneficiaries must be Filipinos who have attained at least high school level of education. The program is flexible and you don't need to attend regular classes. Expanded Tertiary Education Equivalency and Accreditation Program, or ETIAP, is under the supervision of Dr. Nilo L. Rosas, the University President, and Professor Anita P. Santos, Director of ETIAP. For more information, contact the following. Cristina Moreno, 0995-138-0786, or email cvmoreno@neu.edu.ph, or Arlene Sarmiento, 0906-298-9150, or email cedctl@neu.edu.ph. What are you waiting for? Let New Era University be your partner in achieving your dreams.
The coronavirus pandemic is taking a heavier toll on jobs than previously feared, according to the United Nations, with hundreds of millions of jobs lost and workers suffering a massive drop in earnings. According to a fresh study, the International Labour Organization found that by the mid-year point, global working hours had declined by 17.3% compared to last December. Again, let's listen in.
This monitor, we estimate that the global loss in working hours in the first 9 months of 2020 has been considerably larger than we estimated in the last fifth edition of the monitor that was issued at the end of June. We present 3 possible scenarios for the fourth quarter, and the baseline scenario now projects that 8.6% of global working time will be lost, and that corresponds to 245 million full-time job equivalents. The question is, why do we see these significant negative evolutions? Well, one obvious reason is that many countries continue to struggle to get the pandemic under control, and as it persists, well, the employment situation worsens. We estimate in this monitor, once we exclude the impact of government support measures, that global labor income declined by an extraordinary, a massive 10.7% in the first 9 months of 2020. That translates into a loss of $3.5 trillion US dollars, an equivalent of 5.5% of global GDP in the period concerned.
In other news, the Eiffel Tower in Paris was evacuated for 2 hours after an anonymous caller threatened to blow up the great edifice in the heart of the French capital, according to police. After an inspection, nothing suspicious was found, and the Eiffel Tower was able to reopen to visitors. A man phoned up, shouted Allah Akbar, and said he was going to blow up everything at the Eiffel Tower. According to a police source who asked not to be named, a security cordon was put around the monument, traffic diverted, and the Eiffel Tower evacuated at 12:15 p.m. local time. Its operator said in a statement that after a thorough search, nothing was found and the tower was able to reopen at 2:15 p.m. The Eiffel Tower usually receives about 7 million visitors a year, some three-quarters from abroad, although even after reopening, numbers are down sharply due to travel restrictions amid the pandemic. A minivan with a Wi-Fi router attached to the dashboard and a satellite antenna on the roof is helping 200 disadvantaged students in Santa Ana, close to Los Angeles, cope with the rigors of distance learning during the coronavirus pandemic. Let's listen in.
The century graduate. Yes? Yes. It's too long of a day.
I know. I like staying home.
I know.
Listen to your coaches, keep having that smile. Have fun.
I had Wi-Fi, but like it would be troublesome. It would be the Wi-Fi wouldn't be that good. So sometimes I'll go to my friend's house and then he will let me work in there. It helps me to connect my Wi-Fi and I don't have to bother my friend to go to his house.
In other tech news, TikTok is urging a federal court to block U.S. President Donald Trump from banning the video app, arguing the move is motivated by election politics rather than legitimate national security concerns. The Chinese-owned app, which is widely popular in the U.S., has come under fire as tensions escalate between Beijing and Washington, with Trump threatening a ban if it's not sold to an American company. Attorneys are set to argue the case on Thursday before a judge, U.S. time, who will decide whether to put Trump's order on hold until a lawsuit over the ban is resolved. Citing confusing and contradictory statements about TikTok by the president and other agencies, the motion for a preliminary injunction argues a ban is not motivated by a genuine national security concern, but rather by political considerations relating to the upcoming general election. TikTok, which became a global phenomenon with its brand of short, addictive phone videos, has some 100 million U.S. users. A deal to restructure ownership of the app was thrown into doubt Monday when Trump vowed to block a deal that allows its Chinese parent firm, ByteDance, to retain any control. All passenger vehicles sold in California will be zero emission by 2035 under a new rule aimed at fighting climate change and smog fouled air. California wields considerable clout in the American auto industry as the country's wealthiest and most populated state. Transport emissions cause more than half of California's carbon pollution output. And parts of the state are vexed by some of the most toxic air in the country, according to the office of Governor Gavin Newsom. But Newsom's efforts to curb vehicle pollution have put him at odds with President Trump, whose administration has blamed higher freeze emission standards for driving up consumer costs and depressing the new car market. Wednesday's order was described by the governor's office as an aggressive effort to move the state further away from reliance on climate-changing fossil fuels. The order won't prevent California residents from owning gasoline-powered cars or selling used models, according to the governor's office. But it does call for partnerships with private businesses to speed up creation of charging networks for electric cars and stations for non-polluting fuels such as hydrogen. Tesla said it's slashing battery costs to speed up a global shift to renewable energy and could have a $25,000 self-driving model available in 3 years or so. Chief Executive Elon Musk and the head of Tesla's power team laid out battery design, material, and production innovations that combine to cut the cost per kilowatt hours by 56%.
But it was always our goal to try to make an affordable electric car. And I think probably, like I said, about 3 years from now, we're confident we can make a very compelling $25,000 electric vehicle that's also fully autonomous. I mean, this is definitely a new approach. We got the Tesla drive-in movie theater, basically. It's good to see everyone. It's a little hard to read the room with everyone being in cars, but it's it's the only way we could do it. So hopefully it's cool, and hopefully you can hear me. Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right, great. So obviously the issues we're facing are very serious, with climate change, and we're experiencing these issues on a day-to-day basis. It's incredibly important we accelerate the advent of sustainable energy. Time really matters.
The chief executive, Elon Musk, and the head of Tesla's power team laid out battery design, material, and production innovations that combine to cut the cost per kilowatt hours by 56%. New approaches to making lithium-ion batteries for vehicles are desperately needed given the limited supply and cost, Musk said during a Battery Day presentation. Tesla shares dropped about 6% in aftermarket trades as investors learned the road ahead was not short. Musk had put out word on Twitter that Battery Day announcements would be insane, driving high expectations. Innovations, some still in development, were expected to pack more energy into battery cells, cut production costs, and dramatically extend battery life. They expected it to be several years before transformative battery making methods were being used at scale in Tesla factories. Australian rescuers were forced to begin euthanizing some surviving whales from a mass stranding that has already killed 380 members of the giant pod. While 88 pilot whales have been saved since the pod was discovered beached on Tasmania's rugged western seaboard 4 days ago, the death toll is expected to rise as the window for rescue closes. A crew of around 60 conservationists and expert volunteers have spent days wading in the chilly waters of Macquarie Harbour, surrounded by the anguishing cries of dying whales. Pilot whales, which can grow up to 6 meters or 20 feet long and weigh a ton, are highly social. Some animals have resisted rescue or tried to return to the pod after being freed, becoming beached for a second time. Such is the level of distress that authorities said they had to carry out mercy killings of at least 4 whales. The crews are now focusing efforts on a group of 20 to 25 partially submerged whales using boats fitted with special slings to guide them back to the open ocean. But increasingly, attention is turning to how to safely dispose of the carcasses of the nearly 400 whales that have already died. And take a look. A stranded whale is struggling in shallow waters. It is among the hundreds of animals still stranded on Australia's southern coast. At least 380 pilot whales have died since their pod was discovered beached on Tasmania's rugged western seaboard 4 days ago. Australia's largest ever mass stranding. About 90 of the creatures have survived, and the death toll is expected to rise as the window for rescue now begins to close. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said the 2020 to 2021 season would probably not start until next year due to ongoing uncertainty surrounding the coronavirus pandemic. Speaking during a panel discussion on CNN, Silver said the league hoped next season would see a full 82-game schedule with teams playing before fans inside their home arenas. But the NBA Supremo said for that to happen, the start of the season would need to be pushed back from December to January. The NBA halted its 2019-2020 season in March as COVID-19 sent sport in North America grinding to a standstill. And the Chicago Bulls named Billy Donovan as the team's new head coach, replacing Jim Boylan, who was fired last month after the franchise's latest failure to make the playoffs. Donovan, 55, joins the Bulls after parting company with the Oklahoma City Thunder by mutual agreement earlier this month after his team were eliminated from the postseason. Donovan heads to Chicago after a broadly successful 5-year stint with the Thunder. The team compiled a winning record during his reign with 243 victories against 157 defeats and made 5 consecutive trips to the postseason. This season, he was named Coach of the Year alongside Milwaukee Bucks head coach Mike Budenholzer by the National Basketball Coaches Association. The Bulls have failed to reach the playoffs for the past 3 seasons and have not appeared in an NBA Finals since the 1997-98 season when Michael Jordan led the franchise to victory over the Utah Jazz. Now, Ji Fang hits the gym for at least 2 hours every day and has the physique to prove it, while others her age square dance to stay fit. She prefers pumping iron instead. Take a look.
哦，平时他们锻炼，跟我不一样的。他们锻炼就是跳广场舞，社区里边会组织他们一些活动，就是什么敲锣鼓、敲腰鼓啊，或者是跳广场舞，这种的话呢，也是很好的，但它不属于定向训练。我这个呢是属于定向训练，对吧？就是说可以塑形。不管你怎么去跳广场舞，它达不到我现在这个状况。我是这样想的哦，因为到了健身房以后才知道。健身房会对于你的每一块肌肉、你的骨骼等等，都会有很好的一个调理，或者说一个保养的作用。那就一直要健下去，只要活着就得健身。区里边会组织他们一些活动，就是什么敲锣鼓、敲腰鼓啊，或者是跳广场舞，这种的话呢，也是很好的，但它不属于定向训练。我这个呢是属于定向训练，对吧？就是说可以塑形，不管你怎么去跳广场舞，它达不到我现在这个状况。
Wrexham of the National League may lack stars on the field, but could soon have 2 world-famous names in the boardroom after actors Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds were revealed as the 2 people interested in buying the club. Take a look. Takeover has been backed by over 95% of Wrexham supporters trust, who have owned the club since 2011. According to reports, the Hollywood duo will put forward their vision for the fan-owned club at a special general meeting. Members recently voted overwhelmingly for talks to proceed. A statement from the Wrexham said, in due course, Mr. McKellen